In the quiet hum of a Galilean morning, the sea was a mirror reflecting the dawn. For Simon and his brother Andrew, it was just another day, another battle with the stubborn waves and empty nets. All night they had toiled, casting and hauling, but the sea had given them nothing. Frustration was a bitter taste in their mouths, mixed with the salt of the sea spray. Their livelihood, their very survival, depended on the day's catch, and today, failure was staring them in the face. They washed their nets on the shore, the repetitive motion a rhythm of their disappointment, their hopes sinking with every rinse of the coarse rope. Suddenly, a crowd began to gather, their murmur a rising tide of its own. A man was teaching by the water's edge. His name was Jesus. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a strange authority, a calm that seemed to quiet the very air around him. The crowd pressed closer, eager to hear every word, needing a better vantage point. Jesus stepped into Simon's empty boat and asked him to push out a little from the shore. From this floating pulpit, he continued to speak, his words weaving stories of hope and a kingdom unlike any they had ever known. Simon listened, his own weariness momentarily forgotten. Captivated by this teacher, when Jesus finished speaking, he turned his gaze to Simon. A silence fell between them, thick with anticipation. Then, Jesus spoke, and his words were baffling, almost nonsensical. Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch. Simon stared. The deep water, now? After a whole night of catching nothing, every instinct, every ounce of his experience as a fisherman screamed that it was a waste of time. The sun was high, the fish were gone. He could have laughed. He could have refused. It was absurd. But something in Jesus' eyes, a quiet confidence, a gentle command, held him. A conflict raged within Simon. His practical mind fought against a flicker of something else, a spark of trust, a sliver of hope. He looked at his empty nets, at his exhausted brother, and then back at the man who spoke with such certainty. Taking a deep breath, he replied, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I will let down the nets." It was a leap of faith, a small act of obedience against all logic. With heavy arms, they rowed out to the deep. The nets, once again, sank into the blue depths. And then something happened. A tug. Then another, stronger this time. The rope strained in their hands. The net grew heavy, impossibly heavy. They pulled, their muscles burning, their eyes wide with disbelief. The water churned as a massive school of fish, a silver, writhing torrent, was hauled towards the boat. There were so many fish that their nets began to tear under the sheer weight. The boat groaned, dipping dangerously low in the water as it filled to the brim. Simon signaled frantically to their partners, James and John, in another boat nearby. They rushed to help, and soon their boat too was overflowing with the miraculous catch. Both vessels were so full they were on the verge of sinking. The shore, the nets, the failed night, it all faded away. In that moment, surrounded by an impossible abundance, Simon, the seasoned fisherman, was completely undone. This was no ordinary catch. It was a sign, a power he couldn't comprehend. Overwhelmed. Simon fell to his knees before Jesus. The fish were forgotten. All he could see was the holiness of the man in his humble boat. "Go away from me, Lord," he cried out, his voice choked with awe and a sudden, crushing awareness of his own unworthiness. "I am a sinful man." Fear and wonder warred in his heart. James and John, two, were speechless, staring at the miracle that surrounded them, their world. Their understanding of what was possible had just been turned upside down. But Jesus looked at Simon not with judgment, but with a gentle smile. He reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't be afraid," he said, his voice cutting through Simon's fear. And then he spoke the words that would change everything, the words that would echo through eternity. "From now on, you will fish for people." The promise was staggering. It wasn't about fish anymore. It was about souls. It was a call to a new purpose, a grander adventure than they could ever have imagined. In that instant, a choice was presented. They could take their record-breaking catch, the greatest of their lives, and become wealthy men. Or they could leave it all behind. They looked at the fish, then at their boats, then at their nets, their entire world. And then they looked at Jesus. Without a moment's hesitation, they pulled their boats onto the shore, and they left everything. The fish, the nets, their old lives. They walked away from it all and followed him, stepping out of the familiar waters of their past and into the unknown depths of a new future. They were no longer just fishermen. They were now followers, pioneers of a new kingdom, their journey just beginning.